Sham sagt der Meister, dass man gemom Beisle nicht schmeißt gibt das war mal schreiben ist nur geschrieben beim Yitzchak. Ich bin was heißt Yerushalmi. Die nicht schmeißt Slave Mordechai ben Ephraim Yehuda. Before we go weiter, boys, I just want to leave you with the Chaim, how we learned Pshat in this Rambam that we were muching yesterday. What does the Rambam say? The Rambam says that in Agamora, Ilan Shenota B'Sech HaBayis, you plant a tree in a house, spotted for Maisa. Why? Because it's not a soda. Posik steht, Asetas is called to Azaracha, Hayoitza Soda. Has to be part of a soda. The house is not a soda, so maybe you put it. So the Rambam comes out of the blue. The Yirali Zokta Shuhu Chayev Maises mit Evreim. It's Chayev Maises mit Evreim. The Rav is Mechuluk on him, and the Rambam, which is unusual, brings a source. Usually the Rambam doesn't bring sources, but here, except when he brings psukim, but usually doesn't bring a raya from a Mishnah. Shuchaye b'maisim medavayim sharei. What's the raya? Ta'ina ha'imedus b'chotze. Daf Chof Ches. The Mishnah says in Maises, Ta'ina ha'imedus b'chotze. You have a fig tree which is standing in a chotze. Chayiv la'aseh periseo im oisam kachas. You chayiv to Maises the peris im oisam kachas. Zukt Chaim. How could it be? How could it be that you chayiv? It's Teino Imedis B'chotze. So Chotze has l'choyre din like a bias. It's not a soda. If it's not a soda, it becomes Achai B'maisa. Elamais, Shat is, must be D'Rabbanan. That's how you learn the Ivra from the Rambam. Comes again up Chaim. Chaim puts I would say it's a spin. What's the spin? Look at that. Kavanas HaRambam. Kavanas HaBeinu. This is in Perek Aleph Mishnah Yud, Halacha Yud, Sif Ayin Gimel from the Chaim. Zok Tazay. Kavanas Rabbeinu. The Leitik she doesn't shrank a kasha. She maybe as a peiris there is gagas lebai is but had he brought in these peiris, what's she do? She Atena by Medes Bechotze. There's figs on this tree. I guess it's a tree, but it's them on the tree. Chayiv last the peiris out. How'd the peiris get there? If you brought it through the gag, it's put them into the Mesimaisas. How do I know? The Rambam passes like that peg dalid. Shum shein kan ris me'abayis. So it's tzorich lahachnas lebayis derech hasha. So now for the Rambam that you have to bring it in. It's a Mishnah. Nobody's mechuluk on this. It has to come in derech hasha and not through any other way. So how did it come? How these peiris came? Im kain kan shegodlu bebayis atzmoi. Didn't come through the gag. How did this come in? This came mustama because it grew on a tree, like agamus. It's waxed off a bone. Kan shegodlu bebayis atzmoi rei lo nechnes derech hashar. It doesn't come through the shah. Well, zeh hevi rabbeinu raya shezeh lo mikri knisa derech gagas. This is not considered derech gagas. Why? Shetach in the Mishnah that Yechayev. It came through the gag. I mean, it didn't come through the door. If it didn't come through the door, maybe that's what patters you. The pshat is if it comes through the gag patters you. Right? If it didn't come through the gag, then it's chayev. It didn't come through the shah either. So what's the psul? The psul is it didn't come through the door, or the psul is it came through the gag. So the Chaim is in the Mishnah that the psul is not because it didn't come through the door, because this didn't come through the door either. It just grew there. The Charayim came kansha go to Bais Atzmoi, didn't come through the Shah. So machne shoyz. Uzeh hevi rabbeinu raya. Shezeh loy mikri knisa der gagas. That's not considered der gagas. The fact that it didn't come in through the door, that's not the problem. If it came through the gag, then it would be a problem. But the fact that it came through, it grew there, it was planted there, that's machne shoyz. That's not a problem. It's chayiv. Kim shegol l'sham. Shem mitzil lekamon peik dal lochet hazvov. The Rambam pasuk in the Mishnah Taina mez b'chotze also lecha perisayim shnayim b'li ma'isa. The chotze kavas. Zayim doch the chotze is kavei l'ma'isa, even though it didn't come through the shah. Alma the zeh shegodlu b'chotze atzmai ein b'zeh chasorin shoriyas pnei habayis.
So maybe
What?
takes him out to a shot.
Through a shah, yeah. But
No.
it grew. Yeah, what?
From the sugar, from the weird move, he takes it into a shot. Like a shot.
The chotze and the bayis here, the Rambam holds it's the same thing. The chotze is chayiv and the bayis is chayiv and the rice. The Rambam shem shekavas lechotze bebayis kavas lechotze. You don't have to get that deep into it and say that he brought it from the chotze. The chotze alone is kaveh. The Rambam holds the chotze is also kaveh. Now he's saying is a raya from the Mishnah that it doesn't have to be derech hashar. If it comes through the gag, that passes. But if it doesn't come through a shar at all, it doesn't go there. It's oichet chai. Ein b'zeh chason shal riz pnei b'chotze. Derech hashar. Shegam b'chotze tzor dafka sheyach derech hashar. Im nichne shloike derech hashar. Ein noi kavas afil m'darbo. Alma d'zeh loi mikri shenechne shaloi derech hashar. Shoin. So so Chaim is saying that the Rambam brings it an ayat to this halacha that he's saying. This Moedik Chiddush. The Rambam says if you plant something in a house, you put the takim with the rice, but you chayv with the rabbanim, the raya from the Mishnah. What's the rabbi said? What's the raya from the Mishnah? The Mishnah Ratzach was, where do we see that you chayv with the rabbanim? The Mishnah is talking the rice, the Mishnah is talking the rabbanim. Where's the raya from the Rambam that is at the rabbanim? That's the shaytach in soda. Soda is chayv with the rice, a house nishkan soda, so you put it. Look, the Rambam. You put it, you believe that you chayim with the rabbanon. What's the raya from the Mishnah that you chayim with the rabbanon? Maybe that Mishnah says that you chayim with the raisa. What's the Morishach? And if you say that you can't be with the raisa because of soda, so it's a problem. Why is it chayim? It's not a soda. It's not you shouldn't be chayim. Shet elamai that you're chayim. The fact that you tell me that the rabbanon mizzayin that Mishnah is talking with the rabbanon, that is the punchline. He's saying Shet Mishnah that you chayim, and there's no chasodin of came into the gag. It didn't come through the gag. The door, I don't need a door. Right in the Mishnah, you don't need the door. But what's the raya that it's the rabbanon? What's the raya from the Mishnah that it's the rabbanon? Elamai, Mizman, the Chaim is saying, can't be that you chayim with the raisa because it's not shka soda. You have a Mishnah here that says a soda has to be a soda. The Mishnah says that you chayim has to be. The Mishnah is talking with the rabbanon. It's a shvera raya. Okay. Those are Keb Chaim. All right. There's a big piece over here in the Bialacha, but we'll see that another time. Let me then invite it. Huh? What?
These
Glass houses.
Glass houses
Yeah.
for these trees or whatever. Botanical Gardens has it.
What?
Botanical Gardens has it.
Yeah. No.
And you have these trees growing up.
Everything goes there, yeah. So, greenhouse.
No. So
You put it. We spoke about it, yeah. You put it. It's in a house, even though it's in the ground. You asked me, right? It's in the ground. But it's not a bias. It's a bias. If you say that greenhouse is a bias, huh?
Has to be really dear.
Has to be really dear, yeah. It's really dear. Okay. I'm going to magnetize this Mishnah in Chala before we go back. Let's see. What steht da in the Mishnah? Mishnah steht da in Chala. The Gemara is medame the din of Chala to the din of Trumas and Maisis. That's what Chaim says. Yeah, right. What's the raya of Chaim's raya? Chaim said that chuva, you put a roof on the chuva, right? Which you put a roof on the chuva. There's no walls. It's a chuva. There's no windows. It's open to the elements, right? It's a chuva. Chuva means it's a brach neshtiv, yeah. So you put a roof on it. All of a sudden, it's chai b'trumas u'mayis. So I think that's what Chaim's raya. Chaim is saying it just has to have shelter that the rain and the snow and the shemesh and the sun doesn't zerem imota. It's really like a sukkah. The sukkah is zerem imota brings the sukkah, right? That's enough to give it in. That's nishka soda. That's the raya from Chaim. Okay, Magnus and the Mishnah said as well. Peiris chutz la'aretz. Now we're talking about Chal. Sech the Chala Perik Beis Halacha Aleph Peiris chutz la'aretz. Shenechnesu la'aretz. It comes into Eretz Yisrael. chayovim b'chala. Chala has to have biyasoris. Yotzu mikan l'shon. These peiros come from, you take it from Eretz Yisrael, you take it outside Chutz La'aretz. Now, even Rabbi Kiva is maskim. Rabbi Kiva holds you go basa shlish rishon. Soon see in a minute. He's maskim in the Reisha from the Mishnah that it becomes, even though it was paid as Chutz La'aretz, it becomes into Eretz Yisrael, that it's chayiv. It's chayiv b'chala. For Rabbi Kiva. Obe yotze mekan l'sham. It comes from Eretz Yisrael, goes outside. Rabbi Lezer mechayiv Rabbi Kiva poit. But what's Rabbi Lezer chayiv Rabbi Kiva poit? Look the Rav, Rabbi Kiva poite, the Shoma mashma. Sheit hapozik, Shoma teviu, Sheit habot Shoma. Shoma means dafkin et yisol. Chutz la'aretz is not chayiv, even though you go basa shlish rishon. But here by Chala there's a mit akro, and the mit akro tells me that Peretz chutz la'aretz, even et yisol, you brought down et yisol. It was in et yisol, and it goes out. It's not chayiv, even though the shlish was, and the ganze zacha grew in Eretz Yisrael. So shama atem chayav me'en atem chayav m'chutz la'aretz, afa pi she'atem oichem milechem oretz, even though it's lechem oretz, the ganze, the whole dough, the gilgul was in Eretz Yisrael. If it goes out of Eretz Yisrael, it is chayiv b'chala min ha'torah. Which is interesting also because it goes basa the Gilgul. So what does the Agamara want? The Agamara we're talking about here on Gimel Amid Aleph, the last line. Here we go basa the Roiv. You planted it. You planted it in the house. It's chayiv. It's not chayiv because it's in a house. You planted the soda. You're chayiv in the soda. Where we go basa if you did it both ways? You started in the soda and it becomes, you put a roof on top of it. You go basa shlish rishon. If the shlish rishon was in the soda, you're chayiv. Shlish rishon was in the house. You put it. So Av Zikles shoot in the Amid Aleph, Mamgim Amid Aleph, Av Bechala Kain, Machloikis, Rabbi Kiva, and Chum. Punkt Rabbi Kiva is Mechulik on the Chachamim, and he also go Basa Shish Rishon, and the Chachamim don't agree with him, you don't go Basa Shish Rishon. The Zelba Machloikis is to be Bachala. Wie zijn de Machloik Bachala? Zoekt de Nacham Libelan Chazan the Pnei Moshe. What? Both ways. Where you go, we say machlokes, zelba machlokes. Machlokes and kiva chacham, zelba machlokes. Look the Bachanur Azay. I'm sorry, the Pnei Moshe. Bayi imam rin daf b'chala pligi ibachaz nachamon. Pligi kenze. V'zelam isparish al shas hagidul. The chiva chala doesn't have to do with the gilgul. Don't make a mistake. Think that chala has to do with the gilgul. Doesn't have to do with the gilgul. It has to do with the gilgul leisu when you make the dough. When you make the dough to put the flour in the water, that's when the gilgul is. That's the shas achiv. Outside that saw you made the dough. You started to make it outside. He's making it in the back of a car and he's driving into Eretz Yisrael. And the vet fatig in Eretz Yisrael. Mau, me name it afkan abikiva petur menachalo. Do we say it's also part of menachalo? Hoyu betchilas gilgula. You go both shlish harish when it grows. So who had the nami was medamed is to the din of the gilgul. The gilgul started outside. B'makom aftur hoyse in a chutz la'aretz. Bedami l'tvu shavi shlish biyad agoy. Same thing would be, let's say, in Surya, where it starts to grow in the rishus of the goy. V'locha mimenu Yisrael, in the middle of the growth of these peiros of the tvua, what's a yid gekoyv the peiros. So we say that well, you go bosh shlish rishon and like the bekiva you put. You don't go bosh shlish rishon. That would be one way to learn that chala, the gilgul has the same din of gilgul tvua. Oh, no.
Where is there a different shlish than the gilgul? It's the same size, no? We're not talking about the gilgul.
The tchil is gilgul and the sof gilgul. The Gemara is medamed.
I want to hold the whole thing is chayav, not just the
correct. But he's concentrating on the bekiva. Bekiva is the one. He says you go bosh shlish rishon. About to be said by the gilgul, you go bosh shlish rishon. Is who I didn't know me. You go bosh the tchil is gilgul. That's one side. What the Pnei Moshe is explaining the Gemara. That would be one way. The Gemara is mistapik in the zach. By Dilma, the shani hoche b'chala, the kivin she'achshav b'medes b'mokem achiv. Now it's in the mokem achiv. Is l'kul alma chayeves. Even though it was one shlish outside in chutz la'aretz, but now it's in Eretz Yisrael. It's totally in where it is right now. Meaning l'chayre, that Bishloim by Peiris, Trumas and Mises, the Trumas and Mises is something which would mechayiv you to take the Trumas and Mises. A chiyuv on the Peiris, they have Peiris, often are up them the Trumas and Mises. Even if you don't want to eat, you also have to take off the Trumas and Mises. The chiyuv is on the Peiris. You have to take from these Peiris, you have to be mafish Trumas and Mises. Ma'ashen came b'chala. Chalash kapshat is a chiyuv on the Isa. You have to take off the chala from the Isa. It's a chiyuv on the what?
If you make challah.
If you make the Isa, you want to eat the Isa, it's a chiyuv on you, and you're an Eretz Yisrael, then you have to have you have to back that flush challah. But not the pshat is the peiris, the challah, the Isa was in the Isa is Eretz Yisrael, is chayim. As ich hab peiris in the challah in Eretz Yisrael, dafür is mafish. Or the night, pshat is a chiyuv on the challah. That's the chayuv, the shpa, the shayla back and forth here in the Pnei Moshe. Oy dilma, the shani hoch b'challah. We don't have anything to do with the tchilosai, v'soifai, where it was, where not. Such a thing in the mensch. It's also chayiv. Even though Rekiva holds to go about shlish rishon, but challah is not the same like Trumas and Ma'aser. V'lo yidami the hosam, the agidul atzim shlish rishon hoye v'yad aptur. This is clear to Pnei Moshe. Omed beis v'hangu the metama hashas alaba yezu. What says? The Gemara says like this. The statement of the Gemara is that challah and the dinam of Trumas and Ma'aser is the same. So Melam Kiva says you go bas Shlishishin, he says you go bas the Tchilas Gilgul, and the Chacham say you don't go bas the Shlishishin, he says you don't go bas the Gilgulishin. So the Gemara, my ad boy you mean Rabbi Kiva? What are you asking for Rabbi Kiva? How could it be that Rabbi Kiva holds you go bas Shlishishin? It can't be. So often the Mishnah says, Omer Peiris Chutzah Shenechnas Yoretz, Peiris of Chutzahs. So the Shlishishin was where the Gilgul was in Chutzahs. Shenechnas Ule'eretz comes into Eretz Yisrael is Chayav and B'challah. And if you're going to hold it, Rabbi Kiva holds that what? That you go b'Shlish Rishon, it shouldn't be Chayav B'challah because Shlish Rishon was the Chutzahs. Elamai is muchachi to say that going by Challah, Rabbi Kiva doesn't say you go b'Shlish Rishon because Challah is under the dinam. That's the Iver from the Gemara. So the Gemara says, Obe, Sidor Adin was the Machlekes Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Lezer. On Yotzu Mekan Lishom, if it goes out of Eretz Yisrael or goes into Chutz La'aretz, Rabbi Kiva says Yipoter. Why Yipoter? Because it's no longer in Eretz Yisrael. Shoma, it has to be there. It's not there. You're not Poter. It's there. Yechayev. Has nothing to do with the Shlish Rishon. That's Rabbi Kiva's opinion. Or Rabbi Lezer holds that if it comes out of Eretz Yisrael, goes into Chutz La'aretz, Rabbi Lezer Yechayev. So for Klet the Gemara is like, in Sabah Rabbi Kiva Rabbi Lezer. If Rabbi Kiva is going to be maskim to Rabbi Lezer, yofer at makshim. Fakes I get the kasha. Why? Because Rabbi Lezer is the one that says that yotzu mekan l'shom. If it leaves Eretz Yisrael and it goes out to Chutz La'aretz, yechayev. Even in Chutz La'aretz, favos, because you go basa where the Yanika was, where the Chil's Gilgal was, then you have a good kasha. So why over here you say it comes from Chutz La'aretz, it goes to Eretz Yisrael? Why over there you put it? Why do you chayiv? Why it's now in gewachsen in the Chutz La'aretz? Now, bun b'achiyah boy you come in Zira. No, that's another shayla. Let's see here the Pnei Moshe. Ma ad boy you min Rabbi Kiva. The Rabbi Kiva omer peis Chutz La'aretz shenechnas ha'aretz l'chayev b'challah. Kloima l'kach sheninu l'kamon b'reish pei beis l'challah. Peis Chutz La'aretz shenechnas ha'aretz l'chayev b'challah. It comes from outside. It comes into Eretz Yisrael chayev b'challah. Yotzim mekan l'kulam. Yeah, that's the Mishnah. Mishnah said l'kulam. Yotzim mekan l'sham. If it was what in Eretz Yisrael and it goes outside Eretz Yisrael, it's damals to the blazer holds you chayiv. Rabbi Kiva point. Rabbi Kiva says you point. Even though Rabbi Kiva is the one that says you go boss tchilas gedula the shlish rishon, but if it's here it goes out. Well, shake shoma took the batanur. About stet amir shoma you don't go boss the shlish rishon. Aber Rabbi Kiva the blazer says you chayiv. V'shemina minod. The bereish the loy palag Rabbi Kiva moedaba. In the reish Rabbi Kiva holds that water that comes from the Eretz so for chutzah it goes there so you put it. Even though it says even though it says yeshoma, why does he say yechayev? Why say that yeshoma? Im kain sulay shayich limiboye b'hay gavne b'chala. So the kula alma im you don't go bust the shlishishin because you say that from outside it comes inside. You don't go bust the shlish, but outside you go bust it here where it is now. Im nechnes the mischay b'chala. V'afshe hoyse b'tchilas b'mokem abtur. So you see that challah is cholik and these payers of Trumas Amaisa, you go Bosh Rishon. Here you don't go Bosh Rishon from the Reisha, because he says that Yechayev, once you bring it inside, Yechayev.
Correct me, Challah, that wasn't the Pashut Taich in the Mishnah. Wasn't the Shiloh of he started at Tchilas Google and after Google? The whole Mishnah says one
That's the
Google.
You're asking a good question. The Pnei Moshe is saying that Tchilas Google was outside Israel.
That's not Pashtus. The Pashtus is
The Mishnah states
the Google's later.
You're
That's
right.
when you're Machai.
You're right.
It was Paris. What Paris means it's still Tvuah. Paris means it was still Tvuah.
It's gerecht. But if that's the case,
It
the
wasn't
Pnei
Gilgal.
Moshe,
It's called Paris.
One
It's
second.
Gilgal.
It's a complicated mission. It's a kivega, it's a very complicated mission. But we have to learn first simple the Mishnah. The Mishnah, how the Gemara understands it, the Pnei Moshe, you can't say like you're saying. The Pnei Moshe, otherwise what's the Gemara talking about? If you're talking everything was finished in Chutz La'aretz, the regular Gilgal, everything was finished, Fatah Chalas, and you brought it in, you still was said that has nothing to do with the Rekiva. Rekiva says you go Bos Shlish Rishon when there was a split. There was one side in Chutz La'aretz, one side was in the Bayis, one side is in the Soda, 1/3 here, 1/3 there. Then you have a Rekiva with the Chacham. But if everything was outside the Eretz Yisrael, was a finished Chalas, then Shtuva said, Elamai the Pnei Moshe, we're talking about Chilas Gilguloi was in Chutz La'aretz, and you brought it into Eretz Yisrael. I shait the Mishnah. Azay to Rishami Galant Pshat in the Mishnah. That's how Rishami learned Pshat in the Mishnah. That's not evident when you learn this Mishnah. I'm learning Rishami. Let up the Rishami. This is how the Rishami is learning. So one way he's saying look to Pnei Moshe is Chala has nothing to do with Peiris of Eretz. So Araya, you bring it from Peiris, you bring it the Isa from outside. Started outside, it finished inside. You bring it inside. The Chayda B'Kiva should be Chayiv. You go busted. It should be Potter. Man, you go busted Chilosad, and here you say that you're Chayiv. Why you Chayiv? Because Chala is different. Chala is different. Has Shoma, whatever it is, under the Dinam. That's one way to learn. Inami is like the Pnei Moshe. The Hach Baya. This question that the Gemara is considering whether Chala is doimet to Trumas Emaises. Va'af b'Chala kain kiposhte mispasher. He says like this. He's learning different shot in the Mishnah. The din of Suya. What's the din of Suya? Suya means that you pot it, because the Shus Goy is mafkiyah from the Chiyah. It's in Suya, and Suya there's no kinyan for the Yisrael until he buys it. The Yisrael, he buys it from the Goy. With the Kamret, the Zokstach the Inyan Maise Pligi. But the Sefer should be Yad Yisrael, but now grows later in the Yad Yisrael after the Kinyan. Umeshum the Gabba Ma'aser to as Arachiksiv has to be yours. V'hilkach Mekiv Nashlish Rishon God the Beptur. It was by the guy. 1/3 was by the guy. He bought it from the guy when it was one shlish. Pligi but the Mekiv Acha Shlish Rishon Ata Hoylach. Whatever it was, but the first third before it became right. Upota. There was V'shus Goy Upota. After the Sefes, even what goes afterwards, it's the Sefes, it's also possible. Everything goes to the Shlish. Rabbanim Mechayev at the Sefes. Rabbanim, the one that said that you're Chayev on the Sefes, they do not agree that you go to the Shlish. Avol, Bechala, no, there's a different limit. That's not the same. Why? Because there it says, Arisai Seichem Siv, Umimatina, and Arisai Hanochi. Even though what the Chacham say that you don't go to the Shlish, or about the Shlish was in the Shus of the Akum, even the Chacham ask him that Arisis Hanachi, and that's a miyut, and you're not chayiv, even going to the Chacham. V'hocher mekivin she'isa nases b'yad Yisrael. Over here, in our case, where the Isa was made in b'yad Yisrael, Ikel Meima can mazugen the moide by the bekiva. The Torah had the Sefer Mimaises Bechala, me is Bechayev. Ain't no chenami you told me on the Sefers. You put because you go bust the Shlish Rishon, and the Shlish Rishon was B'Ptur. Masha Ein came Bechala, even though the Tchilas Gilgal was B'Ptur. Of about say over here. That's only din of Maises. Bechalas me is Chayev. Now he doesn't explain why. Why is Chala different than Maises? Because there's a din you go bust the Shlish Rishon. Because you say Seichem, you might the Nochi. But here is no more Nochi. Now it's in the Shus of the Yid, even though the Shlish was before, was in the Shus of the Yisrael. But you don't say you go bust the Shlish Rishon. The Moed of Akiva, the Ptur was there in the Shlish Rishon, but now it's Yisrael. Now it's Seichem. That's what's kaveh. You don't go basa shlish rishon. That's one pshat. That's a shaila in the Gemara. Do we say by Rishon Sechem is mafkia that you don't go bashlish rishon? By Dilma Mekiva Puturim Maisis. He says he bought them Maisis because with shlish rishon was by goy. Lefi shacha shlish rishon ata mahala, and that was by goy. Gam b'chala Puturim. Maybe by chala it's the same halacha. But zeh metama hashas. This is the question of the Gemara. Ma ad boyi min Rabbi Kiva. Was fixed like kasha Rabbi Kiva. Said the Chafarisha Mishnah. The Shemina law, the Leipala Garesha, the Peg Beis Lechala. He's not arguing on the first part of the Mishnah, even though Rabbi Kiva is in the Sefer, but he's masking to the Pnei Moshe. He's masking to the Reisha. Peres Chutzlores Shenech Nesu Lores. You have a Chutzlah going into Eitz Yisrael. That's Chai B'Chala. Rabbi Kiva is not mechulik on that, and he's masking to that. Why is he masking over there? I Shlish Rishon wasn't Chutzlores. Look, the Pnei Moshe was feel that I feel the Peres Shegodlu Kulam B'Ptur Kamoi B'Peres Chutzlores. I feel ochi im nechnes the oretz chayav. Not only by payer, not only by chalameino. He's saying even by payer is chutz oretz, which then trumas and maises, no trumas and maises in chutz oretz. But if you take these trumas and maises and you bring it now into Eitz Yisrael, im nechnes the oretz is chayav and b'chala. It's chay b'chala because now it's inside Eitz Yisrael. You don't go basa the gildul the isa. Let's get mechashon. Mikol kan shloi godol el ashlush b'ptur. The Mishnah is saying that you're saying Rabbi Stein. You're saying the Mishnah doesn't talk about the shlish. He's saying the kolshkein. The kolshkein can shloi godol el shlish. In the Gemara is talking about a shlish. You see from the Mishnah that even though a ganze Zach was gewachsen in chutzot, Peres chutzot, it was finished Peres, doctor. Even though it was finished Peres, you bring it into Eitz Yisrael. The fact that it's here now is a shayla to say that it's yichayev.
According to one man.
Yeah, but in the ratio, when it comes from outside Eitz Yisrael, comes to Eitz Yisrael, everybody's masking but Yechayev. Everybody agrees. Shabbos goes the other way around, comes from here, goes out. Then you have Machlekes, the Kiva says Yipota, and he says Yechayev. Yotzu Mikan, the Sham, Rabbi Kiva says Yipota, because you go where the Peres are. That's what Rabbi Kiva says. I don't care where it grew. When it comes to Chala, Sven Tzvi says, is it Eitz Yisrael Yechayev? Is it Chutzah? It's Yipota. It doesn't have to do with Trumas and Maises. It depends where it grew. Chala is totally where it is. It's now here in Eitz Yisrael. It's chayav. B'viachem, shoma, you have to bring. Outside, you don't have to bring. That's what the Gemara brings right. V'chein, loy motzes nami levaboyi ipcha, dim godlu b'chiyav, let's say faket, if it's Peres from Eitz Yisrael, b'nechnes u'leptur, goes outside Eitz Yisrael, the middle el, the ipcha havye, ali b'deb'katayik, kumoy zora b'chuva. Now, the Gemara is medame, Peres of Eitz Yisrael, going out to Eitz Yisrael, like zora b'chuva, and the churva has a din of soda. Ve'avi yishlish. The Rabbi Kiva had to say chayiv. Why? Because it grew in a soda. U'mubayi lo the im af b'chala kain. Do we say b'chala the same thing like a soda? But reizeh kamoy peiris or oretz yotzel l'chutzores. Imkein achinami lo yiteboyi lo the shemila Rabbi Kiva awesome. Rabbi Kiva says b'fesh in the sefer yotzel mekan l'sham. Rabbi Kiva poitem in achala. Why yotzel mekan l'sham? Rabbi Kiva says you put in achala. Because now it's the chutzah, so you go bust it where it is. So you see, mefedish from the Mishnah and Chala, the Bekiva is not going to go with where it grew, it goes where it is. Now, Sido and Esi so, it's the chutzah you bought it. V'im av filu godlu kulam b'chiv, poite Rabbi Kiva. Now, this is a big chiddush. Even godlu kulam b'chiv, it grew in ganzen Esi so, peiris yotzu mikan l'shom. Mikan l'shom means gevachs in the head. The whole thing grew in Eitz Yisrael. Now, the fact that you took it out, that's enough to pat it. Pointed Rabbi Kiva because it has to do where it is. Now it's spotted. It doesn't matter where it grew. He says, Mikolshken kan lo hivi ela shlish b'chiyev. Only 1/3 was b'churva, which is a soda. V'achach yotzel l'makom tu. The pshit today, the potter Rabbi Kiva min achala. Chala is going to be potter. You don't say by chala that was before it was in a makom tu, and now it's in a makom chiyev. It's a makom chiyev, and it goes to makom tu. You potter. What's a shape hashtil the mind of Messiah Mekoma? The Mishnah holds, the Gemara holds over here. The Maskona looked at Pnei Moshe. That has to do where it is now, and doesn't have to do where it came from. This Anders from Mr. Meiser is from.
This here and Potter is about only the race. This is even the. I mean, everybody's holds your time in the bottom because even Paris was
The Mishnah talking about that Chiv Derais. Chiv Derais.
It's not like the Rambam. Yes, I'm saying like negate to what the Rambam.
The Rambam is talking about Trumas and Mais. The Rambam is dealing, but we'll soon see what you're speaking about. There's another Rambam arrived with big machlokes. Even by Challah, the Rabbanan Tzanish. That's another shir. But right now, Poshet Pshat, the Gemara is masik at the end that Challah is not like Trumas and Mais. Trumas and Mais has Lubish Lish Rishon, and that's the machlokes of Kibbutz and Rabbanan. Rabbanan say you don't go Poshet